but they
Three, testing. There we are.
Got a different. Oh, you found that thing. I tried to
What
put
thing?
that.
Joe did.
Oh, Joe did that.
Joe came up and fixed it.
I was looking at that today. I didn't know how to finagle it around.
Good evening, everybody. Let's open our service with number 537. You can stay seated. 537 at the cross. Just realized I didn't get my hands very clean. Got drywall mud. Plaster. 537. I'm sorry. I'm not saying what I'm looking right at it. 237 is the number we're trying to go to. 237. I don't know where it, well, I do, but I don't know where that number came from. Wait a second. I'm sorry. Which one did you all select? Which what the old rugged cross? Okay, which one is that?
247. Is that what it is? It's 247.
I am the epitome of Larry Moe and Curly, all just right here in one person. 537. Here we go. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the rugged cross and exchange. I don't think she's heard it. For a crown. Oh, the old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction for me. The dear, she changed the key for me. Glory above, to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true, his shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll exchange it someday for a crown.
Well, boy, that was exciting. That's enough to wake you up. We went from 537 to 237 to 247, and then we changed keys. Yeah, that's awesome. Sunny Saints tomorrow at 11:30. The theme or whatever is Mexican food, so come on out for that. And it'll be good. Usually is anyway. It's always good. So that's going on. Then Sunday we're having a fall festival meeting right after the morning service. Won't take long, but I think Britt's going to have the booths for you to sign up, right? So that's going on there. We came up last night and looked over that stuff. And I'm not, going to make Joe feel guilty. But we are going to put the dunk booth on there, Joe. So if you want to sign up for that, you can. It's completely up to you. If you want to be, I know you got pneumonia for 3 months after that, but it's, whatever. But anyway, but we are going to try to do the dunk booth. We'll have the bounce house, hayride, all that stuff. And last year we had 8 booths, and Tombo came up and built those. I think we're going to try to have 10 this year, so there'll probably be 2 that will be without booths. But anyway, just if you're interested in helping, come out. Also, we're going to be collecting candy. I was looking at the price of candy at Walmart. It's like unreal. So if you want to mortgage your car or something or house or toss in some candy. I mean, it is unreal how much candy is these days. And last year it cost us about probably close to $2,000 when it was all said and done. So if you want to donate some money for that. I know that we had last year somebody donated $1,000, which was great. And but anyway, there are some expenses. I mean, the bounce house and all that stuff. There's stuff that we have to pay for. But pray for the fall festival. My gut's telling me we're probably going to have more this year than ever because of the economy. It's free. We don't ask for anything. They can have a free hot dog, a drink, chips, candy, popcorn. So, just pray the Lord will use it for His glory and that somebody will be reached through that and come to know the Lord. So that's coming up. Men's Prayer Breakfast is a week from this Saturday at 9 o'clock. And I think visitation after that if you're able to go. And I think I'm going to try to have a deacons meeting that day, Dennis. I was going to let you know that tonight. So, yeah, we're going to try to do that. So, anyway, that's some stuff coming up. Okay, I'm going to read you a little devotion here just to get you kind of in the mindset. This is from Streams in the Desert, and it's today's little devotion. And it's kind of short, but it's good. He says, this is taken from Hebrews chapter 6. It says, and so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. And I don't know who wrote this, it doesn't say, but it says Abraham was tested for a long time. Now you think about that. He was tested a long time. I think from the time God promised him to have Isaac, I think it was 25 years. But it says he was tested a long time, but he was richly rewarded. The Lord tried him or tested him by delaying to fulfill his promise. Satan tested him with temptation. Men tried him with jealousy and distrust and opposition. Sarah tested him by her peevishness, but he patiently endured. He didn't question God's veracity, His truthfulness, nor limit His power, nor doubt His faithfulness, nor grieve His love, but he just bowed to divine sovereignty, submitted to the infinite wisdom, and was silent under the delays, waiting for the Lord's time. And so, having patiently endured, he obtained the promise. God's promises will not fail of their accomplishment. Patient waiters will not be disappointed. Believing expectation shall be realized. Beloved, Abraham's conduct condemns a hasty spirit, it reproves a murmuring one, and it commends a patient one, and encourages quiet submission to God's will and way. Remember, Abraham was tried. He patiently waited. He received the promise, and he was satisfied. So, imitate his example, and you will share the same blessing. It's like that. Be patient. That's what Tammy tells me every time I'm at a red light. Be patient. All right, Dennis, you're up.
I think I've got this one. 560. Let's sing the first verse. 560. I've a home prepared where the saints abide, just over in the glory land. And I long to be by my Savior's side, just over in the glory land. Just over in the glory land, shall join the happy angel band, just over in the glory land. Just over in the glory land, therewith mighty host I'll stand, just over in the glory land. Let's take a minute to shake hands.
Been doing drywall?
Sing verses 3 and 4. You can be seated. We'll sing verses 3 and 4 of 560. What a joyful thought that my Lord I'll see just over in the glory land, and with kindred saved there forever be, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory land. Happy angel band, just over in the glory land, just over in the glory
I don't think I've ever sang verse 3 to just Over in Glory Land. And that's a fact. We always sing first, second, and last. So, yeah. And I'm only 60, so, you know, it's... Well, I'm going to read you the hymn story for page 480, Near to the Heart of God. And if you... It's September 18th, I think. Yeah. I think so, yeah. I skipped a few pages ahead in my little book, but... so I've told you before, but I go through, I have several of these books that talk about hymns. This one is Amazing Grace, 366 Inspiring Hymn Stories for Daily Devotions. It's interesting, there's a lot of songs in here I don't know, but the stories are interesting. So this is from Psalm 94:19, and I'm not sure, sometimes the interesting, but let me read that for you. Psalm 94:19, and it says, "In the multitude of my thoughts within me, thy comforts delight my soul." So they have a poem here. It says, "O thou who driest the mourner's tears, how dark this world would be if, when deceived and wounded here, we could not fly to thee." So life is often filled with unexpected problems or crises. Unrest and despair will darken the way of even the strongest saint. Yet the Christian, because of his refuge he has in God, should strive to maintain composure and stability in spite of stress and difficulties. We cannot escape the pressures and dark shadows in our lives, but they can be faced with a spiritual strength that our Lord provides. As we are held securely near to the heart of God, we find rest, comfort, joy, and peace that only Jesus, our Redeemer, can give. Because of this, we can live every day with an inner calm and courage. That's good stuff. We ought to put that on our refrigerator, and read that every day. Let me read that. We can escape pressures and dark shadows, but they can be faced with spiritual strength that our Lord provides. As we are held securely near to the heart of God, we find rest, comfort, joy, and peace that only Jesus, our Redeemer, can give. Because of this, we can live every day with an inner calm and courage. This is the message that Cleland McCaffey expressed in this consoling hymn at a time when his own life was filled with sadness. While he was serving as the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church in Chicago, Dr. McCaffey was stunned to hear the shocking news that his two beloved nieces had just died from diphtheria. Turning to God in the Scriptures, McCaffey soon felt the lines and the tune of this hymn flow from his grieving heart. On the day of the double funeral, he stood outside the quarantined home of his brother Howard, singing these words as he choked back the tears. The following Sunday, the hymn was repeated by the choir of McCaffey's church. It soon became widely known and has since ministered comfort and spiritual healing to many of God's people in times of need. So, when we read this, you'd never imagine it came out of those circumstances, but it did. So here's the poem that he wrote. There is a place of quiet rest near to the heart of God, a place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. There is a place of comfort sweet, near to the heart of God, a place where we our Savior meet, near to the heart of God. There is a place of full release, near to the heart of God, a place where all is joy and peace, near to the heart of God. And the chorus is, O Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God, hold us who wait before thee, near to the heart of God. Yeah, that's an awesome poem and a beautiful hymn. So let's sing the first and last verse. You can remain seated, page 480. There is a place of quiet rest near to the heart of God, a place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. O Jesus, blessed Redeemer, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Hold us who wait before Thee, near to the heart of God. Amen. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate that. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 20. I'm going to continue that, what Montgomery told me. After last Wednesday night service, Montgomery came up and said, Dad, it's up you're up there like you're telling a story. I was like, well, Montgomery, it is a story. You know, it's a story in the Bible. You heathen? No. Yeah, and then I had to remind him. I did have a few points in there for you to consider. Anyway, those kids. You never know what they're going to say. Is this thing on now, Joseph? Test, test, test. I'm going to move this thing out of the way. Uh-oh, holy cow. And see if this will turn off. Yeah, it won't. Okay, so we're looking at 2 Samuel, and we are getting near the end of David's life. It doesn't, I know it probably doesn't appear like that, and some of y'all are probably thinking, yeah, it does, because we've been in this forever, and we have been in this a long time. I'm up to page 107 in my notes on this, and this is just from David's journey, so, and sometimes I'll write my sermons on a piece of paper and I don't do them on my computer. But this is an interesting, there are some interesting things here in the last part of 2 Samuel. We're looking at some personalities that I told you last week kind of rose to the top that I think God wants us to consider and wants us to take a look at. And so that's what we've been kind of looking at. And we looked at, remember we looked at Shimei who cursed David, and that was in chapter 19. And we said that Shimei was a picture of a guy who was seeking God's forgiveness, or hoping for forgiveness from the king. And we could liken it, to a guy who's wanting forgiveness from the Lord, in a sense. And then we talked about Mephibosheth. That's in chapter 19, verse number 24. And we said he was a man demonstrating gratefulness to God. So the first guy, forgiveness of God. The second guy, gratefulness to God. And then Barzillai, that's who we talked about last week. And he's the one, and he was in chapter 19, verse number 31. And he's the one who we said he was a man receiving the blessings from God. And so I talked to you a little bit about that last week, and I gave you all those crowns. Remember there were 5 crowns that we talked about? And so anyway, that was kind of last week. But there's some more personalities in this, and it's interesting how this story progresses. It almost is like it's like you're thinking in your mind, David is kind of coming out of the end of the tunnel. Absalom's revolt is over, and these guys, as he comes back to Jerusalem, these personalities that he interacts with, it kind of just seems like things are on the upswing, that things are going to calm down and things are going to be better. But that's not how it works out, unfortunately. And I think I read this last week, but Matthew Henry, the old Presbyterian preacher, here's what he said: "Don't think it strange while we are in this world if at the end of one trouble is the beginning of another." Isn't that encouraging? But that's what he wrote. And he's taken that out of this passage where, David seems to be coming out of the clouds, and it just doesn't turn out well. So I want to look at, and I think I might have mentioned some of this last week, But we're going to keep going, and we're going to look at this David's rejection. Now, David has returned. Remember, I was using this kind of as the Jordan River. David has crossed the Jordan. He went through Gilgal. He's going back to Jerusalem. And but things aren't peaceful. There's schism in the ranks. And we find that in verse number 41 of chapter 19. It says, "And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king, and they said unto the king, Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen thee away, and have brought the king and his household and all of David's men with him over Jordan?" Remember, we talked about that last week, and they're just making a mountain out of a molehill. They are jealous, envious, and it's goofy. It's just a goofy argument. It's arguing over nothing. And they're basically saying, why were we left out of the party of shuttling you over the Jordan River? Well, who cares? I mean, honestly, who cares about that? As long as he's back. But honestly, that rift has been there for a long time. And so, verse 42, the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, because the king is near of kin to us. He's of our tribe, basically. Wherefore then be ye angry for the matter? Have we eaten all of the king's cost, or hath he given us any gift? Meaning, we haven't done anything other than helping him get back. And so the men of Israel answered in verse 43, the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 parts in the king, and we have also more right in David than you. There's more of us, so he belongs more to us. And so they said, Why then did you despise us, that our advice should not be first had in bringing back our king? And the words of the men of Judah were fiercer. They were more forceful, if you will, more sharp than the words of the men of Israel. So meaning that the men of Judah kind of silenced that argument. But in chapter 20, the story continues. And it begins David's rejection and a revolt. Now, he has just survived this thing with Absalom. And, they put down Absalom's revolt. And it was sad, and he died and all that stuff. And now it seems as if he's going to have to go through a whole nother kind of ordeal like this. So in chapter 20, verse 1, there happened to be there a man of Belial. Now, I told you last week, that word Belial there just means he is not good. Okay, he's just ungodly, he's evil, he's wicked, he's not a great guy. So that's the description. I wonder what the description would be of us if it was in the Bible, but there is Sheba, and he's described as a man of Belial, which is not a good guy. And then it says he's the son of Bichri, a Benjamite. Now, Saul was of the tribe of Benjamin. And there was always that kind of tension because David took over after Saul. But anyway, it says he was a Benjamite, and he blew a trumpet and said, We have no part in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse, every man to his tent, O Israel. So we see, what happens is that nation is divided. As it should have been a celebration, but it turns into kind of this, a sad day, a division, really, of the people. And Sheba happens to be, it gives us a picture of his character, and his character's not good, okay? I wrote last week, Luke 17:1, it says, Then said he unto the disciples, this is Jesus, It's impossible that offenses will come, but woe unto him to whom they come. And I know we're a Wednesday night crowd, but let me just throw this out, guys and ladies. The devil's never lacking a catalyst to destroy a church. All it takes is one. And I think I told you last week, I've been through a church split. I've been through more than one. It's the most discouraging thing I've ever been through in my life. And to watch grown people who are supposedly Christians treat one another like you would not believe It's unbelievable. And you know what? The devil loves that. And isn't it interesting? Look at the very first few words of chapter 20. And there happened to be there. He just happened to be there. And he was the guy who, kind of like it says in the Gospels, that Satan entered into Judas. And then Judas betrayed the Lord. Well, Satan here is going to use Sheba. And Sheba is the catalyst. And he's the one who is going to be the cause of disrupting, dividing, and destroying David's return. Now I want to tell you, go to Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6, there's a listing of things that God hates. And this is chapter 6, verse 16. It says, "These 6 things doth the Lord hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood." I remember hearing a guy preach using that against people who provide abortions. Hands that shed innocent blood. But anyway, a heart that devises wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaks lies, and he that sows discord among the brethren. Now, God hates that. And I know, the background of many of you in the churches you've came out of, and that's always been a point that has been emphasized, that you don't ever want to cause division in the church. If you can't get along with the church, you just quietly leave and you go find another place where God wants you to be or whatever. But Sheba, you know what he does? He lifts up his voice. He actually blows a trumpet. So he gets all the attention to himself. He blows this trumpet and he says, "We have no part in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse." So not only is his character revealed, but he's the catalyst that is going to ruin David's return. And, it's almost like that Murphy's Law. If it can happen, it will. And here's David trying to get back and just trying to get back to the normal life. And this Sheba is causing this disruption. I would say, guys and ladies, for you and I, David is trying to get back to his place, his position, and his purpose, his position of authority, his position of identity, his position where he's at liberty again, he's not hiding. And Sheba is the one who's trying to disrupt all of that. So I would say we could liken Sheba here to the devil. The devil wants to do that to each one of our lives. He wants to disrupt and divide and destroy our purpose and our place and our plan that God has called us to. Poor old David, again, David knows that all of this mess that he's going through, he caused it himself, but he's hoping he's on the other side of this, and now Sheba just keeps driving this wedge, which to me is a picture of how daily the enemy tries to destroy us. And the Bible even talks about that in the Psalms, that our enemies daily will try to destroy our lives. So anyway, there's the Sheba. And I just throw this out for you. Don't be a Sheba. Do not be that person. I can remember Tammy and I was a youth pastor in Greenville, South Carolina for a while. And the pastor's wife, the pastor's daughter, was 14. Beautiful kid. Her name was Corey, but me and Tammy and Corey and another person sang in a quartet. She had a beautiful alto voice, Corey did. Anyway, Corey got pregnant at age 14. Okay. That was not good, I had been replaced because I had left for a while, and when I came back, another guy was in my place as the youth pastor, and so I was kind of his assistant after that because Tammy and I had left for a semester. But anyway, so I wasn't in that official position, but that young girl got up in front of the church and told them what happened, and it was sad, and and all, and it was just a horrible event. And I can remember that Sunday night, after church, Tammy and I had Madison. Madison was in a little carrier, a little thing, and we're walking out to the car, and there were all these, it's almost like a movie where you see these little campfires, There were all these little groups of people huddled up together around their cars, and all these little, and I looked at Tammy, I said, Tammy, that is not good. I said, this place is going to explode. And I went to the pastor right before it exploded, and I told him, I said, I loved the guy, but I said, Tammy and I are moving on. I don't want to be a part of this, and I don't want to be involved in this. And that was all in God's will. The place that we went to, they hired me as the youth pastor as a paid position. But anyway, about 2 weeks after we left, that church exploded and went from, I don't know, a couple hundred people down to like 40 because of that incident. And it was a horrible incident. And I mean, the pastor got up and, did his best to kind of smooth over the situation. But I can tell you this, I don't know who it was, but there was somebody in those groups that was spreading the gossip and the fuel to blow that church up. And the sad thing was, the pastor's dead now. His name was Stan Craig. He was a wonderful man. He had that church at one point up to about 600. Bustling. I mean, it was described as one of the best churches in Greenville. It was a Southern Baptist church at that time. And when Tammy and I went, it was an independent Baptist. But at that time, it was one of the fastest growing, just awesome churches. And it split. And it split from 600 down to like 100. And then Brother Craig got it built up to about 200. And it split again. And it never, after that, it just never really, he may, it kept going, but it never did climb to like where it was at one point. Now, it's got a good pastor there now and all that. But my point is this, guys and ladies. It just takes one person to start spreading that stuff, and it'll infect everybody. And the devil's usually not lacking somebody to do that. Don't be that person, okay? Like Jesus said, woe to him through whom those offenses come. I can tell you, and I don't want to get all deep into this for the rest of the night, but we went to a church split in another place, and this lady in the church approached Tammy and I and just reamed us out over stuff, and it was sad. It was difficult. It was just a bad situation, but we were not guilty of what she was talking about, and I was just trying to pastor the church. And this is the truth before God. That lady was dead 6 months later. I told Tammy, I said, you know what? The Bible says, touch not thine anointed. Don't touch God's man. And I said, that lady could be paying for the way she treated us at that church. Woe to the one who the offense comes through. But we don't want to be the ones who destroy a church. And I pray every day, and this is the God's honest truth, every morning when I pray for this church, I pray that God would build a hedge of protection around this church, that it would not be destroyed, divided, disrupted, discouraged by anybody or anything. Because I've been through it, and I don't want to go through that again. And Sheba, this guy, he's thinking, come on, Israel, we're going to go and we'll get somebody else to be to be our leader. Well, so let's keep reading quickly. All right, so Sheba's the cause. He's the catalyst. He's the one who has the conflict. And then, so verse 2, every man of Israel went up from after David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri. But the men of Judah clave unto their king from Jordan even to Jerusalem. So it split the kingdom. And here's a little, like a little parenthetical thought. And David came to his house at Jerusalem. So he makes it back across the Jordan, all that goes back. And the king took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he'd left to keep the house, and put them in ward and fed them, but went not in unto them. So they were shut up unto the day of their death, living in widowhood. We talked about it last week, but those 10 concubines he left to take care of his house are the ones that Absalom went in and had sex with, defiled them, disrespected them in front of it was done publicly, out on the rooftop. I don't think the people could see exactly what they were doing, but they knew what was going on there. And so when David comes back, he puts them basically in isolation, and he never has relations with them. So that's kind of one of the first things David did. And then verse 4, then said the king, that's David, to Amasa. Now, remember, Amasa was Absalom's general. So Amasa, just days before this, was on the side of Absalom, who was planning and scheming to kill David. And David, out of a gesture of trying to reunite the country, the nation, he puts Amasa over his troops, replacing Joab. Now, Joab was David's general when Absalom was pursuing him, but Joab killed Absalom contrary to David's orders, and most people think that's why that he replaced him with Amasa. But I want you to get the idea here. Amasa has not been David's loyal servant for long, maybe a few weeks maybe or whatever, maybe not even that. And then, so verse 14, then said the king to Amasa, assemble me the men of Judah within 3 days and be thou here present. So he says, hey, I want you to get the army together and be here in 3 days. And so Amasa, verse 5, went to assemble the men of Judah, but he tarried longer than the set time which he had appointed him. So he didn't do it in 3 days. He was not back in 3 days. Now David was not a patient man here, okay? So what does David do? 3 days later, there is no Amasa, there's no army to go after Sheba. So verse number 6, and David says to Abishai. Abishai is Joab's brother. Abishai was one of David's generals, but not the primary one. But David had 3 of them. And there was Abishai, Joab, and Ittai the Gittite. And those were the 3 generals that it was when Absalom was pursuing him. So anyway, he doesn't call Joab. He calls Abishai. And he says, Abishai, verse number 6, now shall Sheba the son of Bichri do us more harm than did Absalom. Take thou the Lord's servant and pursue after him, lest he get fenced cities and escape us. So he says, boy, we got to handle this. And verse 7, and there went out after him Joab's men, and the Cherethites, and the Pelethites, and all the mighty men. They went out of Jerusalem to pursue after Sheba the son of Bichri. And when they were at the great stone, I don't know where that is, but wherever it is, they knew it, which is in Gibeon, Amasa went before them, and Joab's garment that he had put on was girded unto him, and upon it a girdle with a sword fastened upon his loins in the sheath thereof, and as he went forth it fell out. So we're not made privy to exactly when Joab became a part of Abishai's, army that was going out. But anyway, he's with them. Now, Joab was not invited, but at least by David. And so he's with him, and he sees Amasa, and Joab has a belt on with a sheath, and evidently he places his sword where it will fall out when he's walking, to make it look like he's going to pick it up and shove it back in his sheath. I don't know. I've read several commentators on it, and they said, he did it purposely, that he loosened his sheath or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, his sword does fall out, and he picks it up, I think with his left hand, and he goes up, and look how he greets Amasa. This is funny. Verse 9, and Joab said to Amasa, art thou in health, my brother? Now that's the Old Testament way of saying, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? How are you doing today, Amasa? You doing good? And he walks up. What does he do? And he says, he took Amasa by the beard with the right hand to kiss him. But Amasa took no heed to the sword that was in Joab's hand, I think his left hand. So he smote him therewith in the 5th rib, and shed out his bowels to the ground, and struck him not again, and he died. So Joab and Abishai his brother pursued after Sheba the son of Bichri. Joab was not instructed to do that. So listen, if Sheba was the guy who was causing division in the nation, Joab is the guy who was not submitting to the king in his nation. There's no submission by Joab. Now, I want to make a point of application on this. I've been in the ministry a long time, and I've worked around lots and lots and lots of people and servants of God. You know, there's some people who do not want to follow the rules. Whatever the rules may be, it doesn't matter. It's not, you know, you could say the rule is keep, you know, pizza out of this room or whatever. They don't care about that. And the reason why is because they think they're above all that. They don't apply to them. They can do whatever they want. The strange thing is they think they're right in tune with God. They think somehow God's called them to be that way, so they don't have to submit to anything. They do whatever they want. They do it however they want. They do it whenever they want. And they think that in all of that, they're somehow supporting and submitting and helping, serving the king or the pastor or whatever it is, okay? But Joab's not. See, Joab was not supposed to be the man in charge. And the reason is because David didn't trust him. And I've been around people who, you know, I remember when I was a youth pastor, and I've probably told you this story, but my pastor asked all the teachers, all the male teachers on Sunday morning, if they were a Sunday school teacher, to put a tie on. So he told, and I was over all the Sunday schools. He said, Ivan, you're going to tell them all that. I'm like, thanks, appreciate it. So I went in and I've got this, you know, it was a larger church and there was a lot of teachers. I said, hey guys, pastor wants you to wear a tie on Sunday morning, you know. And this guy looked at me and he said, I'm not wearing a tie. And he said, and I'd only been on staff for like 6 months or so. And that guy looked at me and he said, that's coming straight from Bob Jones University. And he said, it's legalism and I'm not going to do it. I said, okay. So I'm sitting there thinking and I'm like, let me ask you a question. Oh, he said, here's what he said. He said, I'm not putting a tie on for anybody. I don't care who it is. Not for you, Ivan, or anybody else. I said, okay. So it's like the Spirit of God just gave me some wisdom. And I said, well, what if Jesus Christ asked you to put a tie on? And he said, well, that's different. I said, really? I said, because the Bible says in Romans 13 that you're to submit to your leaders. If you're under the leadership of your pastor and he tells you to wear a tie, then you ought to wear a tie. You know that guy, that one individual, he never would follow that, but you know what he did? He went to a Sunday school class, and we had several adult Sunday school classes, and his was a pretty large one. He began telling those people that God had called him to start a church. And he said, I'm looking for people to help me start a church. And he said, I need some good, you know, solid people. And word got around back to the pastor, hey, so-and-so is trying to lead his Sunday school off to, you know, to start a church. My pastor was so gracious, and he was like, Ivan, don't worry about it. He said, we'll pray about it, don't worry about it. So that guy had all this stuff planned and worked out and got all these dates, and he left the church. Not one person followed him. He ended up, it was hilarious. Nobody followed him. His little church that he was going to start never functioned. It floundered. And I think in part is because he never learned. You know, listen to me, guys and ladies. As believers, you got to do some things that you don't want to do. Forgive people. Love people. Speak the truth in love. And sometimes, guys and ladies, that's hard to do. And that's just what we do as believers. Joab, he doesn't want to do anything that he's told. He doesn't want to submit. He doesn't want to support and serve the cause. And what happens is, which I think I showed you last week, go to 1 Kings and I'll show you again. So what happens to Joab? Now Joab, listen, he thinks he's doing right and he thinks he's doing good, but in the long run, my opinion, he's not. But in 1 Kings 2, look at verse number where is it? Verse number 5, 1 Kings 2:5. Moreover, this is David's last words kind of to Solomon. He says, Moreover, thou knowest also what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me, and what he did to the two captains of the host of Israel, unto Abner the son of Ner, and unto Amasa the son of Jether, whom he slew, and shed the blood of war and peace, and put the blood of war upon his girdle that was about his loins, and in his shoes that were on his feet. Do therefore according to thy wisdom, and let not this whorehead go down to the grave in peace. I think I shared that with you last week. But here's David's last thoughts about Joab. Do not let that guy die in peace. And he doesn't. If we were to read further in this, in 1 Kings, Joab ends up going to the altar in the house of God and holding on to the horns of the altar, thinking that will spare him. And I think it's Abishai who goes back and tells Solomon, I might be wrong on that, but whoever the general is goes back and tells Solomon, and Solomon says, hey, kill him in there. If he's holding on there, he said, get him. And he does. He goes back and kills him. Joab is a picture of a guy who has a hard time submitting, in my opinion, to the will of God, to the work of God, and to the ways of God. You know, Tammy in her Bible, Tammy was raised in a very strict home, and she has in her Bible annotated in one portion, I think it's in Proverbs, others may, but I can't. And then I think she had in parentheses, I won't. But you know, guys and ladies, as a believer, you know, sometimes when God asks us to do stuff, the reason He's asking us to do stuff because He knows it's the right thing to do. And Joab does whatever he wants. I mean, he kills Amasa, he kills Absalom. He killed, who was the other guy he killed? And he says that in 1 Kings. He kills this other guy, you know. I mean, he killed whoever he wanted. And then, let me show you this passage quickly. Go back to 2 Samuel. And I know that we're running out of time. Pick it up in verse number 9 of chapter, no, that's not the right, chapter 20, verse number 13. So it says, when he was removed out of the highway, that is Amasa. Amasa's wallowing in his blood, and all the troops are going by, and they see him, and they're stopping and looking at him. So Joab says, hey, get him off the highway, and they place something over him so they can't see him. And so anyway, when he was removed out of the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue after Sheba, the son of Bichri. And he went through all the tribes of Israel unto Abel and to Beth-maachah and all the Berites, and they were gathered together and went also after him. And they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth-maachah, and they cast up a bank against the city, and it stood in the trench, and all the people that were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. So they catch Sheba in Abel Beth-maachah. They put up these battering rams. They're going to destroy the wall so they can get to Sheba. Okay? Look at the next verse, and this is where I was going to preach on tonight, but I never got there. Verse 16, then cried a wise woman out of the city, Hear, hear, say I, pray you unto Joab. Come near hither that I may speak with thee. So this wise woman comes out and she says, she speaks up for one, but she comes out and says, Joab, I need to talk to you. Before you destroy our city, let me talk to you. Verse 17, and when he was come near unto her, the woman said, Art thou Joab? And he answered, I am he. Then she said unto him, Hear the words of thine handmaid. And he answered, I do hear. Then she spake, saying, They were wont to speak in old times, saying, They shall surely ask counsel at Abel, and so they entered the matter. Now, I know it's a little hard in our King James to understand what she said, but basically said, in old times, when a matter needed to be settled, the saying was, we'll just go to Abel, and they'll settle the matter. You could find wisdom and counsel in Abel. All right, verse 19. I am one of them that are peaceable and faithful in Israel. Thou seekest to destroy a city and a mother in Israel, and I believe the reference to mother is not her, but to the city. Why wilt thou swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? Now look what Joab says in the next verse. You want to talk about irony or something that's funny. And Joab answered, Far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. I mean, far be it from me when he's got blood on his hands from killing Amasa just a few moments earlier. Far be it from me that I would ever try to destroy anybody. But don't tell Amasa's family that, you know. I mean, this guy's so full of himself that he's like saying, far be it that I would never do anything like that. And I'm sure his soldiers were back there saying, yeah, but he just killed that guy right there. He's like out of control. Well, keep going. Verse 21, the matter is not so, but a man of Mount Ephraim, Sheba the son of Bichri by name, hath lifted up his hand against the king, even against David. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city. And the woman said unto Joab, behold, his head shall be thrown to thee over the wall. Talk about courage. She speaks up, and then she acts on what she talks about. And then verse 22, the woman went unto all the people in her wisdom, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri. Remember the guy who blew the trumpet and said, all of Israel to your tents? Well, his head's cut off in a little bit. And so they cut his head off. And then look what it says. And then he blew a trumpet, and they retired from the city, every man to his tent. And Joab returned to Jerusalem unto the king. So Sheba ends up getting his head chopped off. He was the guy, now stay with me, I'm almost through, I got 1 minute. He was the guy who said, I'm going to destroy the kingdom. I'm going to divide it and tear it up. Well, not long after that, his head's lopped off. Okay? That's a warning to us. Joab is the guy who says, I don't care what David says, I'm going to go kill Amasa, and I'll get Sheba. He does get Sheba, and it's interesting if you look at that next verse, verse 23. Now Joab was over all the host of Israel. Isn't that interesting? But I don't think David put him there. This guy's just doing his own thing. And he's the picture of a guy who just wants to do his own thing, doesn't care what God wants him to do. I can think of, and I would never, share who these people are in a previous ministry I had, but I can think of people in my mind that are that person. They did whatever they wanted. They didn't care what I'd try to tell them or try to help them do something. They just did whatever they wanted. And I'm like, I got to go behind and, pick the mess up of these people. Joab's that kind of a person. Guys, I remember Brother Ivan telling me, he said, Ivan, you'll never lead anybody until you can follow. I'm like, he used to preach a sermon on, you got to carry the cheese before you can wear the crown. And that's when David carried the cheese to his brothers. I'm telling you this, guys, that's for us in the Lord. When God calls us to do something, we need to submit to that. Joab wasn't that kind of a guy. And then the last person, and I went over a minute, was that woman. And you know what? She spoke up. She reasoned with the dilemma. She took the counsel that Joab gave her, and she accomplished the goal. She saved her city. And let me just leave you with this thought, guys. And that's really what I was going to preach about tonight, is this. Sometimes in our life, we don't want to speak up. And we see something that's not going to end well, but there's something inside that says, boy, if I speak up, I'm going to get into trouble, or it's going to start a mess or whatever. This lady speaks up. Let me read you what Matthew Henry says about that. It's hilarious. He says, so speaking of this woman speaking up, here's what Matthew Henry said. Though the man be the head, it does not therefore follow that he has the monopoly on the brains. And therefore he ought not by any law to have the monopoly of the crown. Many a masculine heart, and more than masculine, has been found in a female breast. Nor is the treasure of wisdom the less valuable for being lodged in the weaker vessel. Isn't that's something for us to think about. We put down women many times, and this wise woman saved her city. But more than that, guys and ladies, and I know we could preach a whole message on that, she just spoke up. And I think about it on our own families. I raised those 5 boys. I know how hard it is to speak up. Those boys would be watching something or listening to something. I can remember, man, I don't want to say something, but if I don't, who's going to, And somebody's just got to speak up. And I'd speak up and say, boys, we're not going to watch that in this house. I'm sorry, but I'm going to kill you. No. I'm going to kill you later, don't you? but somebody's got to speak up. Think about just in the world we live in today, guys. We need somebody to speak up. And she spoke up, and she saved her city. So, I know I threw a lot at you. I hope you got something out of that. I'm telling you, though, if you have a chance, read the next chapter. It gets even crazier after that. It's just crazy. He gets involved in some wars and stuff, and then it comes to the end of his life. Well, we'll pick up there next week, y'all, and keep going. So Tammy is, Tammy's